Chapter 421, Zones and Protectors. A giant black tornado stood before them. Its base had a diameter of thousands of kilometers, and its height seemed to pierce the sky. The tornado, the entrance to the abyss of nightmares, emitted a powerful aura. "Have you told them everything about the expedition?" Zara questioned Kane. "I will do that now," Kane replied. "Okay, make sure you don't forget any basic details. Even if we can't die in Tartarus, there are fates worse than death. They need to have all the information they can get to increase their chances of making it out through the abyss in one piece." Zara left the area. She began to teleport the grand expedition to their current location. Kane faced Neo and the others. "Do you know Tartarus catches anything that floats on the Blood Sea and has high negative karma?" "We do. People aren't the only thing Tartarus captures like this." "Oh, you people should know it. Something else that floats on the Blood Sea. Something that is not beings but has life." Neo frowned. An idea came to his mind, but the implications behind it were dangerous. He kept his mouth shut and waited for Kane to continue. "It's the worlds," Kane said. "When a world gathers high negative karma, Tartarus swallows them. The abyss of nightmares is where those worlds are imprisoned. They are now a former husk of what they once were. Tartarus uses them as a shield to protect itself from the prisoners it has captured." He continued, "Here we call each world Tartarus has captured a zone. The abyss of nightmares has 3 floors, and each floor has 3 zones. Everyone will be teleported to a random zone on the first floor. After all 3 zones are cleared, you should be able to find a weak point in the floor and use it to travel deeper into the abyss and reach the next floor." Neo looked around. If they had to fight 9 worlds on their way to Tartarus, he could understand the need for millions of soldiers. Each zone has a protector. They are immensely powerful. Honestly, protectors are the reason why the previous grand expeditions failed. More than half of the Dragon Clan leaders who were slain inside the abyss were done so by the protectors, Kane explained. "How were they slain? Isn't everyone immortal here?" Percival questioned. "Trapped in ice, turned insane, turned into a monster, had their souls devoured. There are a lot of ways around that immortality," Kane said. He noticed the grave expressions of the group. A chuckle left his lips. "Don't worry. This expedition isn't going to be as hard as the previous ones." He gestured at the millions of soldiers. "Unlike before, where quality or quantity was prioritized, this time we have both quantity and quality soldiers. Each one of them is a famous elite of Tartarus. They have mastered their own techniques, and their names are well known for their strength." Then, Kane looked towards the Dragon Clan leaders who were organizing the soldiers. "The clan leaders of this generation are the most unique in history, be it talent or personality. They are known as one of the best in their family's history." Kane returned his gaze to Neo and the others. "Lastly, all protectors who were encountered by the previous expeditions have been taken care of by the expeditions themselves. Since those protectors can't fight anymore, you can navigate through the zones easily," Kane explained. "Are you saying that protectors have been defeated already?" Neo questioned, surprised. "Not all protectors have been defeated, but yes, almost all of them are. Only the last protector, who stands in the 3rd zone of the 3rd floor, remains. The moment you defeat him, you will be able to enter the hidden 4th floor that hides Tartarus core," Kane replied. Neo's brows creased. 8 grand expeditions and 8 defeated protectors. The number was a bit too coincidental for his liking. "Did the previous grand expeditions lose while taking down the protectors?" he asked. "You can say that." Kane shook his head. "Well, it's a lot more complicated. But if we're talking about overall results, each expedition took out 1 protector. The losses they took in exchange crippled the expeditions, and they were forced to leave." He chuckled. "I said it already, but don't worry. This time will be different. There is only 1 protector. The expedition won't try to save manpower and resources, since they won't have to fight more protectors. We have scouted the last protector already and prepared measures to defeat him. Our side has never been stronger," Kane explained. "What about the sacred treasure of Tartarus and the god weapon of Ares?" Percival questioned. Where are they? The sacred treasure of Tartarus should be near its core. As for the god weapon of Ares, it's on the second zone of the second floor. We don't know the exact location, but that's where it was last seen, Cain replied. How big are these zones? Percival questioned, feeling a sense of ominous premonition. They are worlds. So pretty big. Damn it, Percival muttered. Searching for the god weapon was not going to be easy. Oh right, if possible, don't die within Tartarus. You will be struck with random debuffs if you do. Permanent loss of strength, being randomly teleported to another zone. Those kinds of debuffs. While he was speaking, Zara returned. It's time. We are going to enter now. Did you brief them about the abyss? He looked through his thoughts to make sure he had not missed any important detail. When he was confident he had made no such mistake, he replied. I explained all major information they need. You can tell them about the minor details. Zara nodded and turned to Neo and the others. After you are teleported to the zones, follow the orders of the highest authority designated by the dragon clans. Make sure you don't start any infighting, she warned with a smile. If you anger a short-tempered dragon, they might just gobble you up. Chapter 422. Beginning of a Nightmare. Neo and the others followed her towards the large tornado. The dragon clan leaders entered first. Their bodies disappeared into the tornado. Neo could not sense what was happening on the other side. The soldiers of the grand expedition began to enter. Neo's group was the last one. Just when Neo was about to step into the tornado, Cain's voice echoed inside his, Percival's, Olivia's, and Nicholas' heads. Don't leave your backs exposed to the dragons. They are not enemies, but they aren't friends either. They nodded. Percival entered, followed by Olivia and Nicholas. Neo took a deep breath and stepped inside the tornado. He felt a shift when suddenly everything turned jarring. The familiar sense of teleportation now felt jarring, like a chalk was being scratched against a board. Incomprehensible noises began to tear Neo's sanity apart. Everything became suddenly quiet. The noises disappeared as abruptly as they had appeared. Neo could not move or see. It felt like he had no body, and none of his senses worked, not even intense senses. He was floating in a dark void. A voice appeared inside his head. You! What have you become? Why did you betray your bloodline? How can you do this to the legacy your father built upon his blood and sweat? The noises struck his head like hammers repeatedly. Why? 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 Why has the blood of the impartial death been sullied? You have no judgment. You are skilled. You are a sinner. The voice seemed to be on the verge of exploding from anger. Every time it spoke, Neo felt immense pain. It was as if his soul was being peeled layer by layer. He wanted to shout, to thrash around, but without a body, he could do nothing but be subjected to the pain. Your soul is tainted with sins. You cannot be the child of the Monarch. Yes, you must be a mistake. The voice spoke as if it had made a decision. A powerful force crushed Neo's very being from all sides and entered his mind. Neo felt like an eternity passed. When the pain disappeared, he was suddenly standing in the main hall of a castle. He fell to his knees, breathing heavily. His limbs trembled. He touched his body, feeling relieved, finally being able to move. Took him time to regain his composure. He removed the damp hair clinging to his forehead and used his intent vision to look around as he stood back to his feet. His breathing was still unstable, but there was no time to rest. Why you? His attention snapped towards the source of the voice seated on the throne. He tried to use his intent vision to see who was there, but everything was blurry. None of his senses extended beyond a few meters around him. His senses were being restricted by something. No, this isn't restriction. It's almost like this is the natural limit of my senses. Neo clenched his fists. He could not feel the power he once had. That voice that attacked me. Honestly, it's almost guaranteed that it was Tartarus. Why did it attack me like that? And how did it take away my powers? Neo might have understood the loss of strength if he was an inhabitant of Tartarus. But he was not. In fact, as a heaven breaker, Not even Earth could take away his powers from him. Neo frowned. He could not access his shadow space and could not call Obitus back to him. Not even being able to call Obitus, the only time this happened was when I was in the vision of the Sphinx. Where am I? This can't be a vision since I can control my body. He moved towards the source of the voice he had heard before. A figure sat on the throne. Her blonde hair was disheveled, covering her face. A sword was impaled in her abdomen, and blood pooled beneath her. She raised her head with difficulty and stared at Neo with a smile. Why, you took your sweet time to come back. Neo's heart froze. He opened his mouth and closed it. Words refused to come out. Did you forget me, my royal chef? She tried to speak in between her gasps. Moving even a muscle made pain flare through her body. But she pushed her hands against the throne and stood. She stumbled when she tried to take a step. Neo's body moved before his mind. He caught her. Hee, you still act like this. She looked into his eyes. Her deep gaze made Neo's heart beat faster. Those eyes he remembered. The way she looked at him was all too familiar. A gaze filled with tender love. Neo gritted his teeth. He understood where he was. A nightmare. King Morgan chuckled and tenderly cradled his face with her bloodied hand. Why, you are too kind, Neo. You can't see me die even in a nightmare. Her face was only a few inches away from his. As she spoke, her nails started to dig into his face. So why did you forget me? Why did you not try to search for me after you reincarnated? You are dead already. Haha. Are we using that excuse? You must have realized that I am a reincarnator. Even if I'm not, I am someone extraordinary. There was a high chance I am alive. Why did you try to forget me? Her nails started to draw blood from Neo's face. Her voice was no longer tender. It was filled with hatred, jealousy, and something darker. Was the love you showed me so weak that it was drowned by time? Or did you find someone else and decide to discard me? Tell me, Neo. When Neo remained silent, she started to chuckle. Chapter 423, Nightmares, Meeting Mother. It must be that woman, right? She is the one who stole you from me. You can stop now. Neo placed his hand over her hand. Her fingers were cold and trembling. King Morgan would never talk like this. Why wouldn't she? What woman won't get angry when the man she loved betrayed her? He made no move to stop her nails from digging into his skin. You aren't King Morgan. Hee. That's easy for you to say. If I'm not her, then who am I? My nightmare. Neo closed his mouth. She was his longing. He wanted to repay her for all she had done for him. You betrayed me. I learned to move on. So that's the excuse you will use for forgetting me? I never forget her or anyone else. The memories of my past lives are still vivid within me. I hate you. Please don't say that with that appearance. Haha, your voice isn't even shaking, she said. Do you even feel anything seeing me die? The strength behind her nails slowly diminished. Her breathing grew weak. As they talked, her body eventually grew still and she no longer moved. Neo remained still with King Morgan's corpse in his hands. He knew this place was a nightmare, and the King Morgan before him was a figment of his imagination. But it hurt. Losing her again made him feel that long-forgotten pain. Neo blinked, and the scene around him changed. He appeared in a desolate world. Maggots wriggled everywhere he turned. Giant thousand-eyed pillars stood in the distance. Something struck his abdomen. His body flew back and crashed into a giant boulder. What? He struggled to breathe. A giant maggot pressed him against the boulder. While Neo tried to resist the monsters, dozens of thin maggots attacked him. They crawled inside his skin and ate his nerves and muscles. Neo tried to generate world energy, but it was as if he was no longer a heaven-breaker. The giant maggot roared and flung him around. His body rolled against the cracked earth before coming to a stop eventually. He tried to stand. The pain from the maggots eating him from within turned his mind into a mess. They ate his energy and blood, making him feel as if he was being hollowed out. His situation was taking a turn for the worse quickly. The thousand-eyed pillars attacked. His head started to throb painfully. He was being assaulted by unimaginable physical and mental pain. Nonetheless, Neo moved. Why the fuck is my life so full of shit? He placed his hands on his knees and stood up slowly. The giant maggots were rushing towards him. He had to fight. No matter how much he was hurt, he couldn't rest. This was no time or place for that. He gritted his teeth and prepared to face the incoming attacks. The scene around him changed again. Neo appeared in an alleyway. A flickering streetlight was his sole companion in the night. He looked down. The tiny maggots eating from within disappeared. He was wearing different clothes, and there was no injury on his body. This place is where I asked the question about my bloodline curse from primogeniture. Suddenly, he heard a sob. Neo stiffened. He knew the identity of the voice. Mira, his mother's reincarnation. Fuck. Neo moved towards the source of the sound. This world was made from his nightmares. The last 2 nightmares changed after he confronted them. It made everything clear. He had to face his nightmares if he wanted to escape this world. It was easy to find Mira. She was alone in the house. Her knees were pulled against her chest. Tears slipped from her swollen eyes. Mother! Neo stood outside the house. He knew he had to face her. That was the only way to leave this nightmare. But he needed courage for that. Courage he didn't have. He had escaped when he heard her sobs back in his world. Her cries made his heart wrench. They were too painful. Fuck! His mother had saved him when he was dying after seeing the 4th vision of Sphinx. And yet here he was, afraid of meeting her. I'm fucking shit. He suppressed the trembling in his hands and rang the doorbell. Mira reacted instantly. Perhaps she thought it was George, her boyfriend, who rang the doorbell. She wiped her tears and opened the door. Why you? Hi, Neo said, trying to smile. I don't know if you remember, but I am. Mira shrieked. She swiftly moved back with a fear-stricken expression. Neo froze. Only then did he recall the medical report of Mira that Henry showed him. She had trauma from mystical monsters because of the labyrinth incident. Seeing him, the person at the center of that incident, triggered her memories. She began to hyperventilate. Mom! Don't come near me! Mira slapped his hand away that was trying to support her. It took her a moment to realize what she had done. No matter how afraid she was, she understood who Neo Hargraves was. She couldn't insult a person of his standing. I am sorry, she said while trying to stop herself from shaking like a leaf. It's okay. I was the one at fault for appearing without notice. Neo left. He walked without thinking and ended up stopping on a bridge. What am I even doing? He covered his face with both hands. The first nightmare with King Morgan ended after he spoke to her without hiding his emotions. The second nightmare of his battle with Valkyria ended when he decided to confront the maggots even though he was incredibly weak. The pattern was clear. He had to face his nightmares head-on. But it was easier said than done. The gaze of his mother, the one who saved him long ago and treated him gently, now looked at him with fear. It was as if she was staring at a monster. Fuck! I'm feeling like killing myself. Neo extended his senses. Unlike what happened in reality, Henry did not come to solve the misunderstanding. George, his father's reincarnation, was missing too. Without any support, Myra's mental state only got worse. I'm beating the shit out of that Tartarus asshole after I leave this place. Neo moved back to Myra's house. As much as he was reluctant to meet his mother, he needed to leave this place. He had to be quick. Elizabeth did not have much time left. Neo could not afford to be late due to a nightmare that wasn't real. He rang the doorbell. Mira was not as surprised as before when she saw him. Is there something you need? She questioned. It was a misunderstanding. Huh? Dad, I mean George. He didn't cheat. The woman you saw was a healer. She came to fix up George after he was beat up in training. Neo's words brought an avalanche of information. Took Mira time to process all of it. How do you know that? She asked, gripping the door's handle with force. George must have sent you to cover for him. She stopped speaking, realizing that was impossible. Neo Hargraves was the heir of the Hargraves Corporation, the ruler of the first-year Demigod Academy students, the champion of shadows who cleared the shadow trial, and clan leader of the great clan of death. He was not someone George could use as a shield. How do you know all about the affair? As I said, it was a misunderstanding, not an affair. Neo spoke, then added. Brother and I were keeping an eye on your family's situation. What? You are my mom, and George is my dad. At least your original reincarnations are. That's why we kept an eye on you. We were worried about our parents. Mira blinked, stupefied. If she was surprised before, she was now stunned. Neo knew everything he said was not an easy pill to swallow. Mom! He took a step towards her. Mira retreated instinctively. What are you doing? Can you let me hold your hand? I want to prove what I said. Mira stared at his outstretched hand. She was still afraid of him. But his words were too shocking to ignore, and for some reason, she did not feel like he was trying to take advantage of her. She placed her hand over his palm lightly. Neo used intent to transfer Springbloom's blessing to her. The blessing healed Mira, physically and mentally. She was able to calm down and think clearly. This power, it feels familiar. It's my mother, the goddess of spring, Persephone's blessing. Mira opened her mouth and closed it. Neo chuckled. It's okay. Take your time. This type of information isn't something one can come to terms with in an... Neo's surroundings changed. He had conquered his third nightmare. Where am I now? Neo noticed he was floating in space. Countless maggots were eating his body. His blessing repeatedly regenerated him, but the maggots did not stop. He grabbed them and crushed them. The maggots became fierce upon seeing his resistance. Chapter 424. Awakening Void Element. Neo tried to use world energy again, only for it to not respond. The same was true for Obitus. His blessings responded, but they were weakened. He brought his palms close. A tiny ball of lightning started to condense between them. He compressed it to the limit, the amount of death being forced into the tiny point distorted space. Neo ignored the maggots eating him and kept his focus on the task. He let the ball explode when it reached its maximum limit. Thousands of large red lightning bolts erupted from the attack. Everything in his vicinity was wiped out. Neo used the chance and condensed another ball of death, this time fusing his concept into it. He let it break. The power of the concept was much stronger than his normal attacks. Lightning larger than planets crackled in the space. It forced the maggots to sleep. As if to say his attack was a joke, more maggots arrived. Neo repeated his attacks, only for more maggots to arrive. It did not matter how many were forced into eternal sleep. Their numbers were endless. Neo kept fighting without a break. Time had long since become a blur to him. Slowly, doubts started to creep into his mind. Could he escape this place? Would he be forced to live his nightmare eternally again? Neo kept fighting the maggots without a break. His mind slowly entered a trance. The maggots, the emptiness, they were gnawing at his heart. He was being forced to relive his worst memories. But Neo didn't run. He embraced those memories. So this is a nightmare. Felt like he was reaching an epiphany. He had always known what a nightmare was. They were dreams that showed one a horrible sight. Though living in this world showed him the true meaning of nightmare. It was fear. Neo's limbs were trembling. The nightmare was forcing him to look at his fear. Age, experience, mental resilience. Nothing could protect you from your fear. Neo moved his body on instinct. A black mist covered his hands. He grabbed the fabric of the world and tore it. The tear in the space was the size of a palm. He could see pitch-black emptiness beyond. There no maggot existed. Before Neo could enter that world, the torn space was stitched back. The world of nightmare had healed on its own. Neo looked at his hands. He ignored the maggots attacking him and heightened his focus. The power of nightmares. He was now capable of wielding it. However, his mastery was too low to use and brute force his way out of this world. He needed time to master the nightmare element. Time he didn't have. There was only one other way. Neo needed fear and use it to learn the nightmare element. I have the perfect place to take fear from. He looked around at the maggots. He was afraid of them, but the true reason for his fear was something else. His memories of eternity. The seal on the memories made by his mother could be broken by a single thought of his. Perhaps she made it this way, predicting Neo would need the memories one day. He dived into his mind. His soul trembled at the thought of breaking the seal on his memories. He grabbed it with a thought and crushed it. Fear, desperation, and agony flooded in. But there was something worse that the memories brought. The loneliness, the emptiness. His mind was being torn apart. The terror of the eternity made him shake like a leaf, and the emptiness he learned from it consumed everything. Emptiness was another name for void. There was no beginning or end, just nothingness. His goals, passions, emotions, memories, personality, body, will to live. Everything was becoming one with void, emptiness. He was losing it all. No, no. Neo desperately searched for something. A goal, fixation, something that could overpower the emptiness that was growing within him. He forced his mind, frozen from fear, to move. Think. Something. I need. He needed a goal so dear to him that nothing could take it from him. Power is your goal. Neo snapped his head towards the voices of darkness within his mind. They spoke to him as Neo lost them to emptiness. You wanted to be strong. That is why you never gave up. The voices disappeared as emptiness took over half of him. The thought remained. Power. His dream was to be the strongest. Christian and Leonora died because he was not strong enough. He manipulated Elizabeth into defeating the Temple of Void since he couldn't do it with his own strength. Cain was forced to sleep because he lacked the strength to kill Anomaly number 79. He was weak and had to force his responsibilities on young Daniel in order to protect Athena, Kronos, Gaia, Zeus, Apollo, and others. He had to force Jack to leave Shadow World and ended up causing him mental scars since he was not strong enough to fight Valkyria while protecting Jack. He could not meet his parents, tell them that he missed them. He was too weak to remove the bloodline curse. Even now, when Elizabeth's time was at the end, he was here, in a world made from his nightmares, unable to escape due to his lack of strength. Every time his problems always had a simple solution. Every time he lacked that one thing, power, he needed more of it, to be the strongest, to achieve his dreams, to cut down anything that stood in his way. Growing stronger had always been his obsession. When Neo came to his senses, he realized the power of void consuming him had lessened. He looked at his arms. His body was there. So was his soul and mind. He hadn't fallen to emptiness. So the only reason I couldn't stand eternity was because I lacked the obsession to overcome it. He was ready to live for eternity if that was what it took to be the strongest. Looking at his hand, Neo could see faint bubbles with purple suns within them and black mist floating around. Void and nightmare. His memories being unsealed allowed him to feel the fear that had once shaken him to the deepest part of his soul. It allowed him to increase his mastery of nightmare at an unprecedented speed. He tried to suppress the tremor in his limbs and used nightmare element again. Black mist covered his hands. He used nightmare element to grab the fabric of the world made from nightmares. Then he pulled. Unlike before, a large tear appeared in the sky. The rate at which the tear was being stitched was too slow, and Neo entered it with ease. He felt as if he was falling. Neo's eyes shot open as he felt the force of the crash. He gasped and looked around. The ground beneath him was made from some unknown material. Neo scanned the area. His blessings were back to full power, he could generate world energy, and Obitus was with him. Neo, you are awake. Yeah, he replied. Do you know where we are or anything about the others? Since this place is the abyss of nightmares, they should have teleported to one of the random zones. For some odd reason, the sky and the boundaries of this world were too far. Neo could not see them with his intent vision. Such a large world would be at least stage 3. A zone, made from a world eaten by Tartarus, shouldn't be that big, since Tartarus was itself stage 3, and there was no way it could defeat multiple worlds at the same stage as it without the inhabitants' help. Something is wrong about this place. Felt dead? Inverted? Lifeless? Neo couldn't point a finger at the thoughts in his mind. Your friends. Obitus suddenly spoke to him. They are above. What? Above? Neo stared at the sky. Intent vision was like a sphere. He could see everything within the sphere. As for objects farther than that, he could not see them. The range of my intent vision should be the radius of a stage 2 planet. How high are they in the sky that I can't see them? Neo started to circulate his world energy in large amounts. He trusted Obitus' words and decided to jump as high as he could, trying to see where the others were. Funnily enough, Obitus didn't react like she used to. It made him feel as if she had gotten used to his praise. Reading his thoughts, she harumphed and became silent. Are you still angry about the last time? I didn't mean it the wrong way when I called you easy. Neo was exasperated. This pattern, he remembered it. Beelzebub had gone through a similar puberty. I'm not going through puberty. It was the fastest and the clearest reply he heard from Obitus. Stop analyzing my words. I just wanted to hear a sorry, and she was embarrassed to say the next words. Neo could sense her emotions and understand what she wanted. My apologies, my lady. I said those words back then only to tease you. And yes, I do love you very much. Neo laughed. He could feel Obitus being happy, embarrassed, and a little angry at how he was poking fun at her. Okay, I'll stop now. He shifted his focus back to the task at hand. He directed the world energy towards his legs. His muscles exploded with power beyond limits, and he jumped. The space around him was torn open from the shockwaves created by his jump's residual energy. His body shot upwards like a bullet, rapidly climbing the altitude. He suddenly noticed objects hung from the sky and held by thick threads connected to their tops. The objects were familiar to him. They were the people who entered the abyss of nightmares with him. The Grand Expedition. Chapter 425. Threatening Dragon Clan Leaders. What they? Neo was dumbstruck. He wrapped his blade in death and darkness and slashed. The blade grew in length and struck the ropes connected to the heads of the people dangling in the sky. His sword bounced back. Before Neo could attack again, he started to fall under the effect of gravity. He landed on the ground. When I woke up just now, I crashed into the ground, and when I left the nightmare, I felt the sensation of falling, he said, staring at the sky. He couldn't see anyone up there from this distance, but he knew they were there. Judging from everything, everyone who was teleported to this area is under nightmares. The rope attached to their head will break if they manage to escape their nightmares. Neo frowned. Everyone was caught too easily. Why hadn't the Grand Expedition prepared for an ambush like this? Maybe this area was never found out by previous expeditions, so they never knew about this monster. But there is still something wrong. I'm pretty sure I was in a nightmare because Tartarus tried to kill me. Why did it put other members of the Grand Expedition in nightmares? Neo felt like he was missing a crucial piece of information. He shook his head, focusing on the task at hand. With another jump, he shot into the sky. Since I can't wait for everyone to come out of their nightmares, I will break the nightmares from the outside. He swung his sword with full force. Suddenly, thick, pointed vines descended from the sky and attacked Neo. He was forced to change his sword's path. The vines were hard to cut through. The force of the clash threw him back to the ground. Neo prepared to intercept another attack when he suddenly noticed the vines weren't attacking. They were hovering around the people dangling in the sky, protecting them. Whatever is creating nightmares has a defensive mechanism but not an active attack mechanism. Since he was inside a zone, Neo predicted the cause of the nightmares was a monster. It must be a strong monster if Tartarus threw him to it. Neo stared at the vines above. It will take a lot of time to cut them. They are strong. He decided to complete his preparations before rescuing those people. After all, he could tell they weren't in danger thanks to his death affinity. He could take time to rescue them. I'll search for Olivia and Apollo first. I need them to heal Elizabeth. Neo stopped speaking when he noticed something. His shadow space was empty. He swiftly opened it and entered the shadow space. Fuck! I should have known this would happen. Elizabeth, Velcaria, Veldora. Everyone was missing. It was the random teleportation that happens when we enter this place. It sent everyone to other locations. Neo massaged his head. Fuck. How could I not notice such a basic detail? If people inside the shadow space teleported together, the leaders of the grand expedition would have been carrying everyone inside their shadow space. They didn't do it as there was no reason. Whether inside shadow space or not, everyone would be targeted by random teleportation. Neo could feel his frustration rising. He didn't blame Kane. Kane might have not explained such basic details to him, since he never expected Neo to carry someone in shadow space. It was Neo's mistake. He should have understood it. He should have questioned himself why the grand expedition was not using shadow space to carry people inside the Abyss of Nightmares. Tartarus. Kane was on his way back after Neo and others entered the Abyss of Nightmares. His house was near the outskirts of Tartarus. Although he was near the Blood Sea, it was impossible to escape. The moment someone got too far from Tartarus, it would pull them back. I'm home. He opened the door and entered. After washing his face, he sat on the sofa. Ava, bring the tea in the glamour glass. Kane sat up straight with an alert expression. Usually, Ava would bring him tea within minutes of his returning home. Ava. He couldn't find her. An ominous premonition crept into his heart. He expanded his senses to the limit, covering thousands of kilometers. Ava was missing. She didn't. Kane left the house and swiftly returned to the location of the Abyss of Nightmares. Knowing his daughter, she must have entered that place with the grand expedition. Damn it! How did she sneak in? Kane's movement did not create any sonic booms. He moved like a ghost and reached the location within minutes. The entrance of the Abyss of Nightmares, the giant tornado, was within his sight. Stop! A swarm of butterflies appeared and surrounded Kane. They formed a wall to stop him in his tracks. Kane stared at the butterflies. She was one of the 3 Dragon Clan leaders who stayed back. You aren't allowed to enter the Abyss of Nightmares. The voice echoed from all directions. Move, Adele. Kane. My daughter is missing. The butterflies stopped flying randomly. They floated in the same place, fluttering their wings rapidly. Did Avarice enter the Abyss of Nightmares? She asked cautiously. I'm afraid she did. You know her. The butterflies did not give a reply for a few moments. Kane, no matter what, you cannot be allowed to enter the Abyss of Nightmares. You don't need to worry about Avarice. The Blood Dragon Clan and Zera will make sure to protect her, Adele said. Adele? Kane said in a low, threatening voice. His presence started to swell, reaching dangerous levels. Move. I'm afraid I can't do that. The reason I'm guarding this place is to make sure no danger enters the Abyss of Nightmares and backstabs the grand expedition. I don't care, Adele. Move. Kane's aura exploded. The butterflies were almost crushed instantly. They resisted his aura and remained firm in their decision. Kane, if this was before your trait was sealed along with your ability to use swords, you could have used force, but now it's useless. You can't force me aside. Kane gritted his teeth. Just as he was about to fight, another figure appeared. Wait, Kane! The man, another Dragon Clan leader, walked to Kane hurriedly. Are you seriously going to fight us here? Elijah, I don't want to harm you too. Stand out of my way. Wait, just listen to me for a minute. Clan leader Elijah, you don't need to entertain him like this. Shut up, Adele. Elijah's desperate expression disappeared, and he glared at her. You weren't here when we fought the great disasters. Don't provoke him just because he can't use his swordsmanship. The butterflies had a lot to say, but they stayed silent. Elijah turned to Kane. Entering that place won't help you. If you go there, it will only throw the grand expedition into chaos. You should know how much everyone fears you. You can't expect me to stay here while my daughter. It will be fine. Zera is there and so is the Blood Dragon Clan, Elijah said. With their abilities, they will quickly realize Ava is there. They will protect her, Kane. They know how much she is worth to you. Before Kane could say anything, Elijah added, just 1 month. They should be able to send Ava out of the abyss by then. You only need to wait for 1 month. If Ava isn't back by then, I will personally make sure no one tries to stop you from entering the abyss. Cain looked at Elijah with stern eyes before shifting his gaze to the entrance of the abyss of nightmares. The exit was hard to find inside the abyss, but it was not impossible. Usually, opening the exit took a lot of resources. The expedition would open the exit only when they needed to escape. But they should know Cain would storm inside if Ava wasn't sent back. 1 month. Just 1 month. Ava will be back within that time, Elijah said, trying to calm Cain. Abyss of nightmares. Neo covered his face and forcefully calmed his thoughts. This was no time to get angry. He swiftly left his shadow space and used the blessing of Artemis. Tell me the location of Elizabeth. The blessing flared to life, and a path marked by silver motes of light appeared before him. He followed the markings. There was no obstacle on his path. No vegetation, no cliff, no monster. The entire land was barren. The feeling of something being wrong crossed his heart again. He ignored it and continued on his path. Quest. Save Elizabeth de Beaufort. Time remaining. 8 hours, 11 minutes. How far do I need to go? Neo had been running at full speed for days. He was starting to wonder if he would be able to reach his destination on time. What if he was too late? What if he couldn't save Elizabeth? He would fail again to protect those dear to him. Neo gritted his teeth and continued running at full speed. He had tried contacting space elementals for help, but it was useless. They, along with other elementals, did not respond. It was as if they had disappeared. Neo could not feel their presence. Chapter 426. The Truth About Abyss of Nightmares. Something was weird about this place. Quest. Save Elizabeth de Beaufort. Time remaining. 5 hours, 35 minutes. Neo's expression wasn't good. He was short on time, and he still had no idea where Elizabeth was. No matter how much he ran, he only saw barren land. Everywhere he went, the sky above was similar, with grand expedition members trapped in nightmares. The number of expedition members caught in nightmares reached millions by now, and it was climbing. The monotonous journey came to a stop when Neo suddenly sensed a huge amount of void element reaction in the distance. The location was at the edge of the range of his senses. He sped up, tearing apart air and space with each step. Just then, he sensed words. The world. An unnatural chill ran down his spine. The world around him underwent earth-shattering changes. Void elementals started to appear everywhere. The ground twisted and rotted. The air turned murky. Neo winced. The unnaturally high amount of void was affecting him. He had no choice but to pull back and go around the corrupted area. Soon, he realized something. Elizabeth's location was near the center of the corrupted area. She must be among the people caught in the nightmares in that place. Neo frowned. The world was a technique unique to gods. Only a void god could have deployed a world with an affinity to the void element. It might be Zera's world, but that doesn't change the fact that it's dangerous to me. Neo gritted his teeth. Although Zera's void affinity was so high that it affected him, he had no choice. He rushed into the corrupted area. The air inside was pungent, filled with void elementals. Neo felt like stones were being pushed into his veins. He used his blessings along with holy and life elements to heal himself as he approached the center of the corrupted area. His abilities were far from enough to counter Zera's element, but maybe because he was a heavenbreaker it was not too deadly for him. He could withstand her world with some trouble. A powerful roar erupted far ahead of him. Neo kept running forward and saw it. A humongous mass of deformed flesh hovered in the air. It roughly looked like a dragon, with 2 wings, a tail, and a powerful presence unique to dragons. The monster was at least twice the size of the moon. It flapped and roared again before flying towards the sky. Then, Neo saw a sight that stunned him. Tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of giant vines descended from the sky. They wrapped around each other and formed a spear larger than the corrupted dragon. The spear pierced through the dragon's chest and pinned it to the ground. The impact was catastrophic. The ground shattered, shock waves erupted, and stones, the size of mountains, flew around. The vines returned to their location after defeating the dragon. Its body was torn apart from being smashed into the ground. A giant hole was visible in its chest. Neo could feel the void world around him flickering. Zara, injured, could not maintain it. She, the dragon, stood up with a stagger and roared again. It was as if the injury in her chest did not matter. Just then, Zara sensed a presence near her. She snapped her neck towards the side and noticed Neo. She froze. Then, instantly, she morphed into human form and flew towards Neo. Purple veins wriggled on his skin. Zara realized her void world was affecting him and retracted it. The void elementals disappeared from the air, and Neo could relax. "Thanks," he said, breathing heavily. "How did you wake up?" Zara asked as she tried to keep her voice steady. Her figure was riddled with injuries. Her hair was half burnt, half covered in mud. Her left arm was barely attached, thanks to a string of muscle. If not for it, Neo suspected her arm would have fallen long ago. Small cuts were present all over her. Purple blood oozed from them, and, just below her chest, there was a large hole, almost spilling her guts. She held them with her hands and stared at Neo. "I conquered my nightmare," he said. "You don't look okay. Are you worried about me?" she asked while trying to let out a flirtatious smile but failed miserably. While her injuries were not fatal for someone of her rank, they were serious. Zara struggled to stand straight. Neo created a simple chair out of mimicked earth and helped her sit. "What's this? You know quite a few tricks," she said. "Can you heal on your own?" he asked instead of answering. "I can, but it will take time. How about you help me with your essence?" Neo's brow twitched. Did she have to put it like that? "I can help you, but remember that you are far stronger than me, so healing you is almost out of my league. And since you use void element as your main element, your body has been fused with a large amount of void element over the period of time. Holy element will hurt you a lot and damage you too," Neo said. "What about mimicked holy element?" she questioned. "Can you use that? My shadow element mastery is only expert. So, no, I can't create a mimicked holy element powerful enough to heal you." Zara chuckled. She could see Neo was seriously trying to think of a way to heal her. "Forget about it if it's hard. My natural vitality will heal me." "How long would that take?" "A few weeks only." Neo nodded and looked above. He could see the trail created by silvery motes of light leading to the sky. That was Elizabeth's location. "Is there someone you know there?" Zara asked. "Yes," Neo answered and lowered his head. "What is this place? And why are so many Grand Expedition members caught by the ambush?" Zara chuckled when she heard him. In that laugh, Neo sensed something else. Something he was quite used to. Despair. "It seems you haven't realized what is happening, dear." "Oh." "Those people up there are proceeding to conquer the Abyss of Nightmares. We are here because the Abyss of Nightmares couldn't contain us, and it decided to throw us out. Well, in my case, that was what happened. But I suppose you managed to escape the Abyss yourself." Her words only confused Neo. "It's fine if you don't understand it. I also found out about this only a few hours ago." She pointed at the sky. "Those people are inside a collective nightmare. It's a connected dream. That fake dream is called the Abyss of Nightmares." Neo completed her words. The hair on his back stood as he understood the implications of her words. "You are correct," Zara smiled. "From everything I can see here, it looks like every expedition that entered this place was always caught by the Abyss of Nightmares. They thought they were clearing zones, fighting monsters, making progress, but that was all a hoax. A dream. It was all a nightmare." Zara noticed Neo's expression as she spoke. "I know it's hard to believe, but I'm sure of it." She looked to the side. "I've traveled this place for days. There are no zones here, no floors, nothing. Only that giant tree, and the vines that grow out of the tree are connected to the heads of those who are inside the nightmare." She looked at the humongous tree in the distance. It was large. Zara suspected it was larger than a star system. Her injuries and mental exhaustion lowered her mental defenses and allowed Neo to read her intent. He saw the giant tree from her memories. The tree was outside his intent vision range, which was why he never saw it, but for anyone with normal vision, the tree was visible from all locations. If what you are saying is true, then how did no one in the previous expedition realize they were inside a nightmare? Neo questioned. How are you so sure that no one realized it? Zara questioned with a smirk. Because I never heard someone warning me about such a big detail. It's quite obvious no one knew about it. That's where you are wrong and right, dear. Zara continued. I told you, didn't I? I was too strong, and the abyss of nightmares couldn't contain me. That's why it threw me out. I suspect the same happened with other leaders of previous grand expeditions. How? If that happened, then those leaders would've. Neo stopped speaking. He realized what Zara was implying. The Dragon Clan leaders who died during the grand expedition. Were they killed after they left the abyss of nightmare and appeared in this place? Neo looked at the sky above again. Everyone was caught in a nightmare. If Tartarus wanted to kill them all, this was the easiest opportunity it could get. But there was no indication that Tartarus was trying to kill them. Then why were previous expedition members killed? You are absolutely right, Zara said as if she had read his thoughts. Some of the Dragon Clan leaders who participated in the previous grand expedition must have been able to escape the abyss of nightmares. They must have helped a few other members escape too. Tartarus killed only those who escaped the abyss of nightmares and became aware of its true identity, Zara explained. Neo frowned. Her words made sense. If everything you said is correct, it means Tartarus never took any one of you seriously, he said. It killed only those who became aware of its true identity. That shows it's quite strong. There was another thing Neo noticed. Chapter 427, Choice of Void Dragon God. There was another thing Neo noticed. If Tartarus was so strong, then why was it trying to hide the truth about the abyss of nightmares? How is Tartarus killing them? Neo mumbled to himself. You don't know? Zara asked, surprised. She took deep breaths to stabilize her condition and kept her hands on her abdomen to stop her entrails from spilling as she spoke. When did you wake up from the nightmares? 2 days ago. How did you do that? Neo suddenly became silent. From what she told him, everyone was inside a collective nightmare. They were having the same dream and could meet each other in that dream. But Neo? He had been in an entirely different nightmare alone. Tartarus must have done that to end me and to make sure no one can help me. When he remained silent, Zara chuckled. It's fine if you don't want to reveal it. Everyone has a trump card or two that they keep hidden. What I want to know, though, is something else. How have you been surviving for 2 days? The energy recovery must be a problem for you, she said. Huh? Neo frowned. Energy recovery problem. Zara stared at Neo, wondering why he was trying to act clueless. It took her a few moments to realize Neo was serious. What are you? She spoke, surprise leaking into her voice for the first time. This place is near Tartarus core. All energy and elementals here belong to Tartarus. It doesn't want us to recover. Thus, we can't absorb the ambient energy in the air to recover our energy reserves. Eating energy-rich food is an option, but that would mean you realize you can't absorb energy from the air. How did you not know that? She questioned. I am used to recovering my energy from devouring the food inside my shadow space, not from the air. That's why I didn't realize it, he said with a calm tone. That's a lie, Zara said instantly. Could it be that? She looked Neo up and down as if she was evaluating him. Neo tensed, ready to escape at a moment's notice. Cain had warned him the Dragon Clan leaders might attack him if they found out he was a Heavenbreaker. Since they don't have any place to draw energy from except food or natural treasures that are rich in energy, they might try to use me as a battery. There was no doubt the expedition must have stocked up on energy-rich food and materials. But a Heavenbreaker was special. Neo's energy purity was off the charts. His current energy purity was on par with a Stage 1 world. Gods could never match that, since they were inherently weaker than worlds at their same rank. A Paragon Demigod, Stage 1 God, and Stage 1 world were at the same rank, technically. However, Demigod was the weakest. the reason being their low energy purity and low element mastery. Stage 1 God had element mastery at the same rank as Stage 1 world, but their energy purity was much lower than the world's. Stage 1 world had both high element mastery in multiple elements and high energy purity. It would take multiple Stage 1 gods joining hands to fight a Stage 1 world. I might be lower rank than Zera, but my energy purity must be far higher than anything the expedition could have brought. I need to be careful. Neo remained alert. Zera was injured badly. If she attacked him, Neo should be able to escape. He wasn't sure though. After all, Zera was a Stage 3 god, which equaled a fabled rank demigod. You have a sacred treasure with the ability to provide energy, right? Zera spoke. Huh. Sacred treasures have unique and arbitrary abilities. The only way something as absurd as having its own energy will make sense. I said I consumed food. Then you must have a lot of food in your shadow space. Can you show it to me? Neo clicked his tongue. Having a sacred treasure like that would garner him attention, and maybe jealousy. He wanted to say he did not have anything like that, but Zera seemed sure of her guess. Let's not digress, Neo said. Are you sure the expedition members who died during past expeditions did so due to lack of energy? That's my only guess for now. I see. Neo nodded. Rest for now. I have to do something. Neo prepared to jump into the air. According to the moon's blessing, Elizabeth was above. What are you doing? Zera questioned. Someone I know is there. Stop. Just before Neo could jump, Zera's hand transformed into a giant hand and grabbed him. The giant hand was a deformed mass of flesh, similar to her dragonized form. She held him with force to make sure he couldn't move. What are you doing? Neo asked the same question as her. Take a look at my condition, Zera said, trying to ignore the burning pain in her body. I am a Stage 3 god, and I look half dead after trying to rescue people from the nightmares. I haven't saved a single person. You think you can do that? She asked. Let me go, Neo said instead of replying. Zera could feel the threatening undertone in Neo's words. She looked above and then back at him. That white-haired child up there. She isn't a member of the Grand Expedition. Is she the one you are trying to save? Neo blinked, confused. Child? Who was she talking about? Ah, Zera was a Stage 3 god. She must be a few thousand years old. No wonder she called Elizabeth a child. Dear, are you thinking something rude? She asked with a smile, while flexing the muscles of her transformed hand, as if saying she could crush him if he called her old. Yes, I want to save her, Neo said to change the topic. I can see why, Zera said. She has been corrupted by void and doesn't have long to live. She chuckled and let Neo go before transforming into her dragon form. I'll bring her down. What? Neo suddenly noticed a detail he had forgotten. Why had Zera been trying to rescue someone from the nightmares? She herself told Neo that those in nightmares were safe, and those who escaped nightmares would be killed by Tartarus. Saving someone from the nightmare was stupid. Did you get those injuries while trying to save Elizabeth? Chapter 428. Choice of Void Dragon God 2. Hee. Who knows? She flapped her wings and flew towards the sky at breakneck speed. Neo was frozen in surprise. She was acting too friendly until now. Was that her real personality? No, there was no way she was stupid enough to put herself in harm's way for someone she saw just now. Elizabeth being here and her not being a part of the expedition must have made it clear she was with me and others from my world. She has no connection to the Grand Expedition. Why is Zera trying to save her? Kindness? Compassion for a fellow person trapped within the nightmare? A powerful roar erupted in the sky as the vines smashed Zera into the ground again. Stop this, Neo said. I don't need your help. Haha. Now you are just being stubborn, she said. As she staggered and tried to force her body up, her limbs trembled, and blood leaked out of her injuries in large quantities. If you really want to save her, shouldn't you ask for my help? I'm hundreds of times stronger than you, and you are also injured. Keep this up, and you won't know when you died. A shockwave erupted before Neo could complete his words. Zara took off to the sky. Her eyes were fixed on Elizabeth's figure. The vine spear descended from the sky again and attacked Zara. Neo, unable to watch longer, jumped up. A powerful force slammed him into the ground before he could move higher. "What are you doing?" he asked. Zara did not answer him. She flew through the sky while dodging the vines and used her air affinity to make sure Neo could not come up. Her intentions were clear. She was making sure Neo was not injured. He gritted his teeth. Although he wanted to shout that he didn't need her help, he knew this was no time to be stubborn. He needed Zara's help to rescue Elizabeth. "Use your world. Don't worry about me. I have a way to survive that." Zara turned her head slightly, looking down at Neo. Her eyes seemed to be looking into his soul. As a clan leader, Zara had always been caring about people under her. Elizabeth, now with them, was a member of the Grand Expedition too. Zara believed it was her duty as a leader to protect everyone who was her subordinate. If Tyr was here, he would have scolded me for putting a single member's life over my own. Zara chuckled inwardly. "Zara!" Neo shouted again. "Use your world." Zara understood she did not have time to hold back, especially when she was already injured. She decided to trust Neo and that he had an ace up his sleeve. The world. A huge domain formed around Zara the size of a Stage 2 planet. Normally, Awakeners could transform their energy, mana/divine energy, into elementals inside their core. This caused their techniques to have a delay. However, gods were not held back by such weakness. The world allowed them to transform the area around them into their territory. They could create elemental energy with no delay inside the world. Humongous purple tornadoes erupted in the sky. They spiraled towards the vine spear, attacking it. Zara roared and increased the output of her world. The void elementals in the air started to corrupt the vine spear. She used the moment of opportunity and passed the vine spear. Her form flew higher into the sky. Suddenly, another new vine attack flew down towards her head from the sky. She was a moment too late to react. Just when Zara thought she would be hit back to the ground, she sensed the time elementals around her rapidly decreasing. Her eyes widened, and she looked below. A caterpillar rested on Neo's shoulder. The tiny fellow was devouring the time elementals like a black hole. However, it barely slowed the vines. They were too strong, and the caterpillar couldn't snatch too much time from them. "Thank you, dear," Zara roared. The vines had slowed, even if barely. They brought Zara enough time to react. Neo had brought Zara enough time to react. She roared and used corrupted wind to throw the vines off track and reached Elizabeth. Thousands of vines started to descend from the sky. It was as if they had been angered. Zara did not wait for them to reach her location and grabbed the vine attached to Elizabeth's head using her mouth. She tore it with a powerful tug. Then, she descended from the sky at quick speed. She crash-landed, unable to descend properly due to her injuries. "Get ready. They might attack now that we rescued a person forcefully." Zara stopped speaking when she noticed the vines did not follow her back to the ground. They hovered in the sky, angry, but that was all. "Zara!" Neo rushed towards her. "Transform back into your human form. A size like this takes too much energy to maintain." Zara followed his words and morphed into her human figure. She was covered in blood and injuries. Her form looked more similar to a half-decayed corpse than a living person. She coughed and could barely stand. Neo created a simple bed with mimicked elements and laid her on it. He did the same for Elizabeth. "You are quite reckless," Neo said. "Isn't there something else you should say?" She smirked. "Thank you and rest now," Neo said. As much as he wanted to heal Zara, he couldn't do that. Not only was he weak, but his holy element would also worsen her injuries. If he had very high mastery in holy, he might have been able to heal her without degrading her condition too much, but his mastery in holy and life elements was pathetically low. "I feel like shit," he thought, gritting his teeth. "She helped me without asking for anything, and I can't alleviate her pain." Zara tried to sit up after a few minutes. "Cough, cough. Wait, don't move now. It's okay." She smiled and waved her hand, trying to assure Neo. Dragons, and dragon gods at that, are much more durable than you think. Her barely attached arm said otherwise. Chapter 429. Heavenly Talent. She ignored Neo and turned to check Elizabeth's condition. Her brows furrowed. The void corrupting Elizabeth's soul and body was weak. But too much time had passed, and the corruption had reached too deep. Zara could remove the corruption. However, she doubted it would be enough to save Elizabeth. Currently, Elizabeth's situation could be compared to a patient whose body was destroyed by a virus. Zara could eliminate the virus, though doing so did not heal Elizabeth. "You can't heal her?" Neo asked from the side. "I can't," Zara said, pulling out the void corruption from Elizabeth with a simple tug. "What about you? You were trying to hurry and take her out from the nightmares. You must have a way to heal her, no?" Neo remained silent. He did have a way, ever which violet. "But I have this." He brought out the flower from his shadow space. Zara's eyes widened slightly. "Where did you find something so precious? That flower is so hard to find that everyone believes it only exists in stories." "I had an acquaintance give it to me." His answer made it clear he didn't want to share its origin. Zara followed his lead and changed the topic. "Are you hesitating because you don't want to make her immortal?" "Something like that," Neo replied. "I'll enter her subconsciousness and ask for her permission to use the flower." He walked up to Elizabeth's bed and sat next to her, grabbing her palm. Zara stared at him with a complicated expression. Reading her intent, Neo realized she was confused why he was asking for Elizabeth's permission. "Do you really need someone's permission to save them? I don't think they will blame you if you use the cure without their permission," Zara asked. Neo noticed the weird nuance behind her words. It was almost as if she was talking about someone else, not Elizabeth. He remained silent, using it to answer her. Zara stood up. She didn't understand his choice, but she decided to help him. Her hand, working hand, held Elizabeth's other hand, and she closed her eyes, chanting. Infinitely small magic circles appeared around Elizabeth's head. Neo sensed Elizabeth's mental defense weakening and realized what Zara was doing. "Thanks," he said, and entered Elizabeth's mind. Unlike last time, there was no barrier protecting Elizabeth's consciousness. Zara's magic had made his job easy. His body became limp, and his head fell on the bed. Despite that, he held Elizabeth's hand tightly. "Save her, Neo. We need her," Zara muttered. She stared at Elizabeth's face. It was so similar to hers. There was no way the similar appearance was a coincidence. Elizabeth must be related to her. Zara closed her eyes, trying to calm her trembling heart. She decided to do something else and divert her thoughts before her emotions overflowed. She blinked, and her iris changed to silvery white. "No matter how many times I see this, I can't believe someone like her exists. Her raw talent is the highest I've ever seen." Her eyes returned to their previous state. The silvery eyes were her unique ability. With her raw talent, she should already be as strong as us Dragon Clan leaders, if not stronger. Why is she only an exalted? Questions overflowed. Did she not have time to train? Or was she not given resources to train? That had to be impossible. Anyone would squander countless resources to nurture someone as talented as Elizabeth and have her on their side. In her long life, Zara had not seen anyone as talented as Elizabeth. Zara was someone who came to Tartarus a few hundred years ago. She had traveled the cosmos, met many people, conquered countless dangers. She could confidently say no one, absolutely no one, could compare to Elizabeth's raw talent. So why was she so weak? 30 years for someone like her was enough for them to reach stage 3 god, or fabled rank awakener. Was she lazy and didn't train? Zara found that hard to believe. One's body said a lot about them. Elizabeth had tiny scars, almost imperceptible, all over her arms, back and legs. Her palms were slightly rough. For awakeners, their bodies improved every time they ranked up. Their physical appearances would keep on improving, and they would be healed. It was said ranking up was better medicine than all life and holy magic. Having scars, even if small and almost invisible, and rough hands showed Elizabeth had fought so much and been injured so much that even ranking up couldn't heal all her injuries. We need someone like her. It's already clear why the previous Dragon Clan leaders couldn't defeat Tartarus. There is a high chance Tartarus has more tricks up its sleeves. If she can be healed, we might have a powerful hidden ace ourselves. It was absurd that she had to depend on improvised plans. But the truth about the Abyss of Nightmares had hit too hard and destroyed all their previous plans. Save her, Neo. We don't have the luxury to fail, or Tartarus will devour us all. Elizabeth's consciousness. Neo opened his eyes. He looked around and saw the lush green prairie, the clear sky, and the bright sunshine. He couldn't help but chuckle seeing his condition. His body was no different than before, a flickering mass of light. Zara weakened Elizabeth's mental defense, but she is still so strong that I can't manifest here properly. He noticed Elizabeth sleeping peacefully on his lap pillow. She had a serene expression on her face. Neo combed his hands through her hair tenderly. A smile appeared on his face. Her mental world isn't as dark as before. Stopping her nightmares seems to have improved her mental condition by a lot. As he spoke to himself, Elizabeth moved slightly, and her eyebrows fluttered open. She looked at Neo. Miss Guardian Fairy? Neo almost laughed when he saw Elizabeth saying those words with an innocent expression. It was a surprise to see her making a face that was not cold. Ahem. Yes, my child. Why are you here? I came to meet you and complete our promise. As he spoke, he consciously kept combing his hand through her hair tenderly. Chapter 430. Asking for permission. The promise that I will live? Yes. I wanted to know if you want me to complete the promise. Oh. You will live, but for eternity. Neo's uplifted mood was plunged into the depths of an icy ocean. He realized he hadn't been able to help Elizabeth. Sure, he was trying to save her, but she would be forced to live for eternity. If he was to believe Ava, Elizabeth would never die after consuming the Everwitch Violet. He could use his concept to kill her, though that didn't change the fact that he had failed to find a no-risk method for Elizabeth. Neo bit his lips. He never succeeded. Every time when it counted, he failed to make a change. Are you all right, Miss Guardian Fairy? Elizabeth held Neo's hand and squeezed it lightly after sensing his downcast mood. He smiled, trying to put up a front. I've never been better than now, child, he said. Now, do you want me to save you? Or would you rather that I do not do that? Elizabeth didn't answer immediately. She seemed to be in deep thought. Neo was a bit surprised when he didn't sense malicious emotions from her. Are you not angry at me? For what? I tricked you. I told you I would save you, but now I came to tell you that there is a condition attached. That doesn't change how I feel. I'm happy that Miss Guardian Fairy came to meet me again. Again, Neo was surprised to see her, the tyrant, talk so innocently. He wondered if she would act the same in real life after he revealed he had been the Miss Guardian Fairy, not that he was planning to do that. What is eternity? She asked after thinking about it for a long time. Is it something scary? Eternity isn't scary or comforting. It's all-consuming. Neo could have sugarcoated his words. He should have sugarcoated his words. But he wanted Elizabeth to know what eternity was. Receiving a yes from her to save her wouldn't matter if he had to trick her by lying about eternity. All-consuming. As long as you have a desire, you will find eternity beautiful. When you have nothing left, no goal, no aspiration, eternity will become a cage. Neo continued. That's why eternity is all-consuming. You have to keep giving it your goals to devour. As long as your mountain of goals doesn't end, eternity will be a peaceful voyage. And when your mountain of goals is completely devoured, and eternity has nothing left to eat, it will turn to you and feast on you instead, Neo explained. He wondered if his explanation was hard to understand for Elizabeth. Do you want to live for eternity, child? Elizabeth thought about the answer. She fiddled with Neo's hand and pondered over his words. I have a goal, she said. I want to live, to see happiness, to see what lies beyond the world I've been forced to live. I want to meet my daughter and hug her. I want to meet Neo and thank him. I want to meet Master and tell her I was happy to have someone like her in my life. And she stopped. A lump seemed to have formed in her throat. Neo waited for her. I want to meet Clara and Paul and apologize to them. You didn't do anything. I wronged them, Elizabeth said, not waiting for Neo to speak. I trusted my decisions and believed my choices were the best. I thought I had seen the cruelty of the world, and only by returning cruelty to it would they let my children and I live in peace. I thought absolute violence was the answer to all questions. She took a deep breath and said, I forced my choices on my children and my people. It was my fault. That's why I need to apologize. Neo remained silent. It was Elizabeth's choice, and she had clearly put a lot of thought into it. And after everything, I want to travel. Travel? Yes, Master used to tell me that the world is vast and there are a lot of things to see, things that would amaze me and maybe make me happy. I couldn't do that before. There was no time for it. I was the queen of my country. But I think I can do it now, she said. Neo froze when he heard her. If Elizabeth wanted to travel, why hadn't she done that after she left her country and instead came to the academy? She did that for Neo and Amelia. Since the beginning, Elizabeth only lived for others. Only now was she starting to live for herself. I have heard your choice, child. Neo patted her head and decided to return to the outside world. Just before he disappeared, Elizabeth held his hand tightly and stopped him from leaving. Will we meet again? She asked. I will always watch over you and protect you. He had, of course, no intention of revealing he was the guardian fairy. Nobody liked to expose their true selves. He doubted Elizabeth would want him to see her past. That wasn't what I asked. His figure broke into countless fragments of light. Elizabeth tried to grab them and stop him, but he left. Neo opened his eyes with a groan. What did she say? Zara asked from the side. We can use the Ever-Witch Violet, Neo answered. He grabbed the flower. You know how to use it? Zara questioned. Somewhat, he replied honestly. I need to pull out the flower's essence and insert it into her. I don't know what to do after that. I see. Zara nodded. I don't know how to use the flower either. If Ava was here, maybe that could have changed. But you are alone in this now. Neo nodded. He held the flower in his hand and pulled its essence out with his will. The flower started to wilt while a purple mass of misty energy condensed in the air.
Hello everyone. We now have a Discord server. Join us for faster updates, discussions about your favorite novels, and exclusive Discord-only content. Don't miss out. See you there. Scan the QR code on the screen or enter any of the displayed links into your browser to join our Discord.